Well, we are only 2 days into the official off season, 2 days into free agency here, and the St. Louis Blues have been pretty busy already. They've signed center Pius Suter, they've signed Nick Bjugstad, also a center, and they've made a trade with the Montreal Canadiens, sending Zack Bolduc to the Habs in exchange for Logan Mailloux, a young defenseman. They also placed Nick Leddy on waivers earlier today. They've been busy, as I said. So, what do these moves mean for the Blues next season and into the future, longer term? Were they the right moves to make? Did they go about them the right way? And what could be coming next for the rest of the offseason? We're going to talk about all that and more today on Note News. Welcome into another episode of Note News. We're a St. Louis Blues podcast. It's John and Alec with you as always. If anyone's new to Note News, we're all about the Blues, and we go live twice a week. Although this is our third time already going live this week, and it's only Wednesday. So I think we did Sunday, Monday, and now Wednesday. So it's been busy, but that's the name of the game, especially right now in the off season. And we're going to continue to be here after the Blues make big moves. When that happens and whenever there's big news, we'll be right here to talk about it and react to it and hopefully engage with all of y'all in the chat as it happens. So if you want to come back for that, we'd love to have you. The best way to follow along with us is to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Thanks for 400, everyone. We really appreciate it. Let's keep it going and get to 500. We really appreciate it. Like this video, follow, rate, review wherever you listen, and then we're on socials on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. Well, where should we start? It's been pretty busy. The Blues have not been quiet. Have not gotten off to a slow start. I feel like free agency in general has been kind of a flop as opposed to a frenzy. That a lot of us expected, and I think for the most part that's because a lot of these big names, extended with the team they were already at, even when that was unexpected, like with Brock Besser or something like that. So not a lot of big fish on the market, but that hasn't stopped the Blues at all. They've made a trade and then a couple signings as well. Filling some key roles I think that we would have wanted them to fill this offseason, like already being pretty proactive about that. As I said at the top, we can go chronologically here, starting with the trade to Montreal and then talk about the UFA signings after that. But I mean, this one kind of came out of left field a little bit. Trading Zack Bolduc, young winger Zack Bolduc, to Montreal in exchange for a young right-handed defenseman, Logan Mailloux. And so, it's something that we've seen coming for a little bit, that the Blues were going to deal from their surplus of wingers, particularly the young wingers they have in their system. I don't know if Bolduc is the guy that we saw leaving, but you got to give up good talent to get good talent. I think Mailloux is that, but we can analyze this trade a little bit more. But just off the top here, Alec, what's your reaction to this trade, and what do you think about the trade itself, but also Mailloux as a player?
Yeah, the Bolduc piece was super shocking when the details got announced. Like you said, I think that was just a player that was such a nice surprise for everyone, that getting him moved first, 1-for-1 was pretty surprising. And especially for this player, there is a character situation with Mailloux that we do want to at least acknowledge and address happened. So in his draft year, there was a sort of harassment situation, sharing some things that were not supposed to be shared. You can do more research on it on your own if you haven't heard about this yet. But basically, he came out, asked not to be drafted because he wanted to take the time to improve as a human being, and the Canadiens ended up taking him anyways. They said that they had done their diligence and seen that he seemed to have regretted and learned from it, and seemed to be a player ready for pro hockey. And ever since then, in his playing career, there hasn't been any inkling or indication of negative behavior. So just want to address that as you are scouting not just the skater, but the player as well, the person. So it seems like, has cleaned it up and just stuck to hockey, focused on hockey. And so in terms of the hockey, there is a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. This is a true offensive defenseman that I believe some were calling like the diet Evan Bouchard, which
I've
I don't
seen
know
that
if
comp as well.
yeah, I don't know if I'm all the way there. His defense is really raw, like Evan Bouchard.
Yeah,
Definitely a long way to go on that side of the puck, but the offense speaks for itself for sure. In his best year playing in the AHL was actually his first year, where he put up 47 points in 72 games. Then last year, still in the AHL, put up 33 points in 63 games. Also played 7 games with the Canadiens, put up 4 points in 7 games, which is a lot more impressive in the NHL to do that. So this is an offensive defenseman who you can stick on the right side and really start to get working with this defense. I mean, we'll sort of get to bigger picture stuff, I think later in the episode, but yeah, at first, this trade, I think the reaction from most fans, understandably so, was very negative. And I think I saw myself like to be on that side of losing Bolduc just
yeah.
really stinks. But it is trading from a position of strength, and I don't really know that any of us ever saw Bolduc to be anything more than a top 6 contributor, or not top 6, sorry, middle 6 contributor, which the Blues already have like 3 or 4 guys in that role who could fit that position already in
Right.
Stenberg. I mean, Holloway you'd say is more top 6, but now you've got Dvorsky, Snuggerud on the way, and there's also the other name I'm forgetting is Jake Neighbors. All can fill Bolduc's role pretty well. It's true no one could do what he could do on the power play, but that is a piece that you can find. That isn't a necessarily impossible to find trait, is a power play sniper. Even if it's something that the Blues have sort of been needing for a while now, I trust in their ability to pivot, and perhaps in some of the moves we made today, their special teams should get better, which again we'll get into. But yeah, in terms of Mailloux the skater, Mailloux, I think it's
I've heard both. I think it's Mailloux.
okay.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I guess the French way to read it would be probably Mailloux. I don't know. We'll figure it out once they start announcing him for uh,
The hockey reference says Mailloux.
Mailloux. All right, my apologies. So for Mailloux, yeah, this is a real offensive defenseman skater that you can stick on your pairing already. I think he's ready probably for at least half the season. And I think the biggest thing about this Bolduc trade, that the more I sit with it, is I think long term, this could be an absolute steal of a move. If Bolduc truly only ever ends up being more of a bottom 6 or bottom 9 skater who's very, very good, I think I think Zack Bolduc is going to be a really good Montreal Canadian. But I think he's going to fit his role really well and just about do just that. The defense is hard to. I think that's the toughest thing to lose here, beyond just the goal scoring, is the defense. But this isn't exactly an offensive creator. He's probably never going to crack 50 points, might be the upper limit on him. Maybe 60 if everything goes right, but barely made it to what he had, and I'm not sure that there's a much of like a ceiling for him to be a 35 or 30 goal scorer anyway. And with Mailloux, there we go. Got it that time. This could be a real piece for your defense for like 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, this could be like a core top 4 defenseman for his entire tenure as a Blue, except for probably next year. So I still think it's going to take a little bit of patience with this move, because Bolduc is a little bit more NHL ready. He's a little bit older. And having Mailloux come in, just from the AHL, I don't know that he's shown that he's ready for a full NHL season yet versus Bolduc just played his first full NHL season. So I still think next year we could be looking back at this move, sort of questioning it, but the upside is there. And in like 2 or 3 years, I would not be shocked if everyone was saying that the Blues crushed the Mailloux trade.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like I'm
It still
it's
hurts. I
it's
mean,
still yeah, it still hurts, and it does feel like as we record today, it does feel like the Blues gave up the best player in the trade. Usually, when that happens, you're losing the trade. I don't know why we need to assign winners and losers to these things. The Blues had a lot of wingers. They needed some right-handed defensemen. That's what they did. That's if you had told me how do you think the Blues should acquire some young right-handed defensemen, I would say trade one of the wingers. That's what I would have said before the offseason, and I think we did say something along those lines um, in our pre free agency, our free agency preview episode. So like, it's hard to be upset at the concept of the trade, but yeah, Bolduc hurts. He does feel like the better player here. I mean, he just scored almost 20 goals in his first full NHL season. I think he played really well under Montgomery. Obviously, I think Monty unlocked something in the guy. Maybe I'm confident that Bolduc there's more to his game, and he'll have better seasons ahead for sure. But I'll be interested to see how he performs in Montreal. On a pretty young team, up and coming team. It does hurt. It does hurt for sure. Um, but the acquisition is interesting as well. A more offensive defenseman kind of guy, who it sounds like, based on Doug Armstrong's comments, he's got an NHL job pretty much, and it's just his job to come and keep it. I got the exact quote here from Doug Armstrong. He's an excellent skater, and he's got an excellent shot. He's learning the game from a defending standpoint, but we think he's NHL ready now. I talked to him and I told him he has a job now, and it's his job to come into camp and keep it. So it sounds like probably some bottom 4 minutes is what I'm expecting for Mailloux. Probably starting on the third pair if I had to guess, and they would, if for example, if Justin Falk stays on the Blues at the start of next season, they would probably roll out the same top four that they did this past season. But maybe Mailloux works his way up to that second pair to play alongside Broberg. You get a taste of sort of the top four pairing of the future in Broberg and Mailloux. So I think there could be something there, and that's probably exactly where we'll see him in my eyes. I don't have much to add on like the profile of the player or the character. But just think it's interesting to think about where we might see this guy fit into the blue line. Do you think are you thinking bottom 4 minutes? Do you think he'll see more of his time on the third pair, the second pair? Do you think he's going to start in the AHL? Like, what are your thoughts on where he slots in?
yeah, I mean, I don't think this is going to be. I don't think the defense is entirely done yet. Moving around,
Yeah.
it sounds like there is starting to generate some buzz around a Falk move potentially, and it feels like most people are, yeah, at least hoping for, or at least feel that there is reason to think that Doug Armstrong will do something relating to there, which means that you'd need another body to come in.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say exactly in terms of what the lineup will be, but I do think probably bottom four and probably third pair to start out is right. And I think that is right. This is really an AHL defenseman. While he's played 8 games in the NHL, I wouldn't say that he's necessarily. He could be NHL ready, but maybe not NHL caliber, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like I still think, and I want to reiterate this point. I still think even after this entire next season, we could still have questions on Mailloux, and that would be okay. Just because he is so not far along in his defensive or in his developmental timeline, that perhaps we do play the full season and Mailloux puts up 30 something points, maybe hits 40. If he hit 40, that'd be a really good sign. And it's totally well within the realm of possibility. Um, but I don't even think that's his upside. Like I think his upside is like seriously upwards of a 65 maybe point defenseman. He has shown a true ability to score and to help generate offense, especially in transition as well as in the offensive zone that the Blues don't really have. They don't really have a defenseman who loves to get offensively involved on the play once the play is set up. They've got all these puck movers in transition, but I think Mailloux could offer a different flavor and style of the offensive profile, or just profile
Yeah.
of a defenseman in the offensive zone specifically, where I agree with Doug Armstrong that he does have a role on this team. I wouldn't be surprised if he started as power play quarterback too, and probably could work his way up to quarterback one by the end of the year. Like that's how good of a potential offensive threat we're talking about with Mailloux. But I still want to reiterate that I just think it could take a year before you're really feeling great about Mailloux being in your top four, and that's totally fine. Not
Yeah.
all players are going to fit onto that, Dylan Holloway, I'm just the best skater ever at 23 years old. He'll be entering his age 22 season, and he's got a long ways to go, especially playing defense. So a guy like Broberg, I think, is a really nice pair for him, who's shown to be shut down defensively and one of the best defensive minds that the Blues have on their team. Um, and that's where you profile with him as a potential partner right now. I think that could be really, really beneficial. But I just think it might take a little bit of time, and I'm still hopeful that this trade could look really, really good for the Blues by the time that they're ready to compete for a Stanley Cup.
Yeah. Agreed. Um, I think also, you consider the way that they just approached the NHL draft, right? They just drafted Justin Carbonneau, who in development camp already looks like a really, really strong winger prospect. I think his,
Yeah. Yeah, Carbonneau's been absolutely eating developmental camp alive.
he's been awesome, and I think I don't think his development camp performance like pushed this trade or anything, but I think him being in the system, it makes Bolduc a little more redundant, and it makes any winger, any young winger more redundant. But um, you can afford to give up a guy like Bolduc for a guy like Mailloux, and there are obviously holes to Mayhew's game. His hockey IQ, his hockey sense doesn't seem to be as good as some other players. His defense, as some people have pointed out in the chat, not great. Um, but the offense is there. He's really good in transition. He's a big guy, 6'3" and like 200, 10 pounds or a little bit more than that. Um, and I think he's got a good shot. He's a good skater. I think I'm really interested. I think I think it could be really interesting to see how he and Broberg look on a pair together, because it seems like, you know, they might complement each other very well. I would hope that they
Yeah.
wouldn't like. I would hope that they wouldn't make each other weaker by having different weaknesses, and rather they would make each other stronger by sort of, you know, filling in the gaps that the other has. But like Broberg Broberg can get the puck out of the defensive zone, and if Mailloux's on the other side, ready to skate it up and or receive a pass and rip a shot, it could be really interesting to see how those two play together. So that's really interesting to me. But Mailloux's a guy who has had a lot of success in the AHL recently. He was a top player for what is it? Laval is the AHL team that he was on.
Mhm.
So yeah, excited to see what happens in the next few years with Mailloux. Tough to see Bolduc go, as we said, but um, gotta give up to get something back in return. So yeah, that's the trade. Anything else to add on that before we pivot to these UFAs here?
I mean, just thank you for a fun season, Zack Bolduc.
Yeah, yeah, it is a tough one. It is tough. What might have been. Okay, so next, why don't we talk about the I guess the less flashy of the two free agent signings first. Go ahead and get this one out of the way. Guess we're sort of going in chronological order as well. So Also yesterday, the Blues signed a depth center. They added to their center depth by signing Nick Bjugstad, who's a bottom six center. They signed him to um, a a 2 year, $3.5 million contract. So that's 1.75 million AAV. He is in his early 30s. I think he's 32. And in 66 games last season with Utah, had 8 goals, 19 points. And in 760 games in his NHL career across 13 seasons, he has 157 goals and 330 points. So, also yesterday, Radek Faksa obviously signed with the Dallas Stars. He's going back to Dallas. So this really is just adding on to that bottom six center depth, sort of making up for the loss of Faksa. I think they had a pretty clear idea on Monday night that they weren't getting Faksa back. So this really does feel like just making up for that. One interesting thing about Bjugstad and how he sort of compares with Faksa is Faksa was this guy who was like pretty poor offensively, but really good defensively, especially for a forward. Bjugstad's like a little more balanced than Faksa was, but he is more of an offensive guy than Faksa, and his defense isn't quite as good. Well, it's actually really nowhere near as good as Faxa's, but his offense is much better. So I'm kind of interested to see what they'll do with the bottom six. I could see Bjugstad being the third line center, honestly, and then Sundqvist on the fourth line because he profiles a little more similarly to Faxa. Putting Sundqvist between Walker and Toropchenko, you could roll out a pretty similar fourth line, and then have someone on the third line that's a little bit more offensively capable. So I'm sort of interested to see how exactly the centers will shake out. But what are your thoughts on? Also, apologies if you can hear any thunder. There's a bit of a storm moving through.
It's back to claim you.
Yeah, exactly. Note News OGs, they know. What's your thoughts on the Bjugstad signing and where he slots in to this lineup?
Yeah, Bjugstad I think is a very nice what's the word, like safety piece or
Yeah, depth.
oh, what's the term? Yeah, there's some word I'm looking for. I can't think of it, but Bjugstad is a very nice like thing to hang your hat on that turns this center depth from a weakness to like at least at the very minimum not a weakness, if not just a genuine strength now, which
Yeah.
I think we'll get into with the next signing here in a moment. But if we assume that the top two centers are taken, then you've got to fill your bottom six. You've got Braden Shen, Nick Bjugstad, Dalibor Dvorsky, Oscar Sundqvist, and like maybe even Tex. That's like 5 skaters who all have center versatility on the given night, who can definitely like play a bottom six center role well enough for sure. Probably, I imagine he slots more into that 4C role, and they put Bjugstad. They'll put Shen on 3C. Bjugstad will be the 4C, and then Sonny can fill in based on injury.
Mm-hmm.
But and then let Dvorsky just learn on the wing for now before you transition him to center, probably. But yeah, I mean, the other thing too about both this signing and the next is neither of them, like they are paying almost combined what they gave. They're paying these two players just like 1 to 2 million more than what Radek Faksa was making last year. So they basically turned like Faksa and who was the other UFA winger? Brandon Saad. They turned Brandon Saad and Radek Faksa into Nick Bjugstad and Suter. Excuse me. And I think that's like that has to be offensively just such an upgrade for the on the ice product. Having Faksa was a terrific defender. I believe was my Team Selke choice, but what this team wants to do defensively, they really do help to have a player like Foxa on the roster to win faceoffs and maintain puck possession. So I think maybe the flavor of Blues hockey could change a little bit. It's not going to be quite of that restringent, dominating, suffocating defense. But if you look around the league, that trend doesn't really work for most teams. The teams that do it best, even then, struggle to find long-term success, like Winnipeg, like Carolina. Sorry, John, and like LA. And Doug Armstrong made comments to the effect of, look, defense is essential to winning championships and to performing well, but the league is an offensive league. The league is skewing towards offense, and that's the most important thing to find. And so if we want to get a little bit better than we were last year, we're going to have to make some sacrifices to do that, losing a Zack Bolduc, losing a Radek Faksa, losing that absolute shutdown defense that we had. If we can be an above average defensive team with 4 real offensive lines that can threaten the other team on any given night, the thinking here is that's going to lead to a lot more wins than hoping your fourth line can hang against the like the Colorado Avalanche first line, which worked last year. That's why WTF was so fun. But that type of thing is just impossible to predict year to year. And I think to expect that and to rely on that again would have been bad process from Dougie and the Blues. To have like to just run WTF back again and hope it works versus getting some real offensive pieces for the bottom 6. Even if you had to give up one, there's still enough wild cards and sort of like choice options on the wing that they can mix and match however they please. And they have really brought in just about every skill set of forward that you could hope for. So it'll be interesting to see how it all like puzzle piece fits together. But I think Bjugstad is just a very nice insurance card. I think that's what I was looking for, to have for this team that, yeah, isn't going to offer Fox's defense, but his offense is going to at least be as valuable as that, if not just be an overall more valuable player for less money.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the money point is really interesting. Someone in the chat, shout out, said Suter, Bjugstad, and Mailloux combined will make less than Mikael Granlund, who signed in Anaheim. So like
it's hilarious.
Yeah, like it's. I'll take what the Blues have just done, right? Also, I think there's a big thunderclap coming. So sorry again for all of that.
It's coming, John.
It's happening again, man. Anyways, so why don't we just talk about the center position as a whole here, and talk about the big news of the day, which is they also signed Pius Suter, who's pretty much like the top center left on the market today. They signed him to a 2-year contract at 4.125 AAV, so a total of 8.25 million. When it's all said and done, he's only 29 years old, and he's coming off. I mean, it's this past season was the best season he's had. In 81 games, he scored 25 goals, 21 assists, 46 points. So big season for him, like for his career, right when he needed it. And honestly, like this contract, I was really surprised to see that's all it took. Like, honestly, because he is the top center left on the market. And like there's a lot of teams out there that need a center. And he is like a pretty reliable one. He's not flashy. He's not a top line guy, although he can handle those minutes and has in the past. But still, like, 2 by 4.125, that's all it took. I am thrilled. And this is the guy, like, when did we start talking about this? Weeks ago. I was like, this is the center that if I could, have a choice of like a reasonable option, right? A feasible option that the Blues could sign. Like, this was the guy because of his reliability and like I expected him to be pretty affordable, which he was. At least back then, I expected him to be pretty affordable. Today, I didn't, but he was. So super exciting. Um, he does really well at even strength. I think that's one thing that's interesting. So in his 2 seasons in Vancouver, he um, got most of his goals at even strength. I think Jr. Over at the Athletic pulled it, but 34 of 39 goals. So that's pretty interesting. You know, he's not like a special teams guy, offensively speaking, or a power play guy, offensively speaking. But yeah, like, what are your thoughts on where he slots into this lineup? And I mean, I think he's obviously a middle six center, but I think the interesting thing is, you know, now as we've started to talk about already, you've got Bjugstad, you've got Sundqvist, and you have Shen, who played those second line center minutes all year long last year. Was really good on that Holloway Shen Kyrou line. That was the best line on the Blues consistently all season long. And so, what are your thoughts on how they'll shake out down the middle? Obviously, Thomas is on the first line, and so the conversation starts after that. But who to you is the 2C? Does Shin move back to wing? Someone in the chat asked that as well. Like, do you put Shin back on the wing and have uh, uh, Sonny and Bjugstad taking on those bottom six center roles? So yeah, like what are your thoughts on how the center position will look in St. Louis come October?
I do want to say, more importantly, on the center discussion, that today is Robert Thomas's birthday. So how about that?
Happy birthday, Bobby T.
Turning 26, the potential greatest Blues of all time. But yeah, the way I would run down the center core is Thomas 1. I think Suter is pretty much set to be the center, the 2C. Which, by the way, yeah, I guess breaking news to some in the chat. Pius Suter is a St. Louis Blue. And shout out everyone in the chat. Thanks for tuning in today. We got a huge watching. Glad you all could make it. But I think Suter is pretty much set at 2C. It kind of feels that way. At least in terms of like skill wise, you know, he put up very similar production as Shen last year on a worse Vancouver team that with much greater defense too. It kind of feels the only thing I will say, and okay, I guess I'll make my one negative point first before I get into just how good a job Doug Armstrong and co have done today or over the past couple days. But the one way that I don't see this necessarily, or the one way I could see the team stepping back this year, is I don't think we're as strong in the face-off dot, which was a huge part of why we were able to control play and just really like suffocate the life out of teams late into the third period last season. Robert Thomas is a plus face-off winner, has been getting better, just like the rest of everything else he does, has been getting better at it every year. Radek Faksa last year had a 57% face-off win. That's massive. Now, he wasn't taking too many because he was playing fourth line minutes, but still had more minutes than his wingers by a lot. Pius, sorry, wrong Suter is I'm looking at. The other Suter who played in St. Louis. I need the new Suter in St. Louis. Pius Suter last year only put up a 42.7% face-off winning percentage, which is really poor. Now, that is way lower than his career norms. His career norms are more around that 49 mark, maybe 48% mark, which is like fine, but never been a terrific face-off winner. And Braden Shen, on the other hand, also I think falls into well, last year he did have a career year best of 52.3%. Typically is around 49 to 50%, which is like perfectly fine, which actually is better than I thought it was. So shout out Shenner. But I do think the face-off winning percentage could take a step back, having now lost the pieces we did at center who were so dominant in the face-off dot, adding Suter, who isn't like amazing. Same thing with Bjugstad, isn't amazing at taking face-offs either. But enough of negative talk, because this is a really, really fun signing for this team.
Oh yeah.
A huge deal. Should fit in as the 2C. Defensively becomes one of the best defenders on the team. Received Selke votes last year.
Hmm.
And this is how you can make up for Faxa in the aggregate, is by getting someone who's just as good on defense, but giving him more minutes. That's going to be a huge difference. Despite his size at 5'11", he's not necessarily a huge guy, but knows how to be smart and play smart and should lead a good defensive line, which is, if that second line is Holloway, Suter, and Kyrou, my gosh, that could be the best defensive line of forwards in the league. Um, and if it is, Buchnevich or Snuggerud, or someone who's a little bit more unproven on defense, or at least for Buchnevich has something to prove next season, even then, I still think he could captain a good second line of defensive effort. And then the offensive creativity that he brings is there. It's not like amazing like Robert Thomas, which is why he's a 2C and not a 1C. But this is absolutely going to be a huge season for Suter. I would not be shocked to see career numbers for him across the board. Just the ability and playing opportunity that this team has. He's just entering his prime at 29 years old, a young 29 years old. So after getting out of the mire of Vancouver, getting more ice time, I really think that this could be a huge opportunity. And then at 3C, I'd put Shen. I still think his face-off ability is essential for what this team wants to do. And just having him be a enforcer presence is a lot more meaningful in the center of the ice rather than like up the boards. But I also think that, and then I would put Bjugstad as 4C with Dvorsky and Sundqvist as depth options, who will probably play winger. I'm curious to see how much Dvorsky gets used this year, because I could see him having like a 30 to 50 game sample. I could also just see him playing like 75 games and pretty much playing the whole season in St. Louis. I think that is maybe to be determined, but is another option on that's like a ridiculous winger option if Dvorsky does get kicked to the wing for this season. So yeah, what was once a clear weakness for the Blues was the spine of this team. You now have 6 players, went from arguably like 3 good center options to now 6. Not just that, but seeing like the type of impact that these guys can make, all who have very complementary skill sets to how this Blues team wants to play hockey. It's a fun mix, and I think there's a real opportunity for this to be at 4.125 million, like
Yeah, it's a
this
bargain.
could be the signing of the offseason.
I think it really could. And look, honestly, I'm gonna call it now. I think Suter is probably the best defensive forward on this team. Like he is like at the top of the league for forwards when it comes to defensive capability. He's so good. And I mean, it's fitting that he is Swiss. He's from Switzerland because he really is a Swiss Army knife. Like you can put him wherever you need him. He's so versatile. Yeah, he's so versatile. Like he can play center, and he probably will play center for the Blues, but he can also play wing if they need him to. Like he has done that before. That's something he can do for sure. He can handle top line minutes. If God forbid Robert Thomas is injured, knock on wood. Um, but like he did that in Vancouver, and it led to some of the best numbers in his career. Not like elite numbers, but the best of his career so far for sure. Um, and then you can play him on the penalty kill. He's immediately going to slot in on the first penalty killing unit. He's such a good penalty killer, and you can pretty much pencil him in, or write it in pen for like 15 to 20 goals or something like that, because he can score a little bit as well. I would be surprised if he. I actually don't know. Like it might take some more time for me to make up my mind on this, but my reaction is that we see him start on the third line. That we see them go back to the Holloway Shen Kairu line just because it was so effective and because Shen, has more of that offensive capability. I feel like he's a little less lopsided than Suter, who isn't bad offensively, but I think Shen is a little bit more balanced, and as the captain and because of his play has sort of earned that spot. I think at least to start the season, I could easily see them swapping. But as Cody said in the chat, why break up that Holloway Shen Kairu line? It was just so effective for so long last season, and you know, that breaking up because of Holloway's injury was a big reason why they lost in the first round. So I say go back to it at least to start and see how that third line looks with Pius Suter in the middle. But really, I'd be happy with pretty much any permutation of those two, and wingers around them and stuff like that, because I think they're both going to be really effective. And I mean, I'm not saying I don't think that their center depth is now a strength, but it's not a glaring weakness in the same way that we were worried about it being a couple of days ago. I feel like.
I think I kind of maybe not totally disagree with that. I kind of feel differently, I guess, or I don't know. I think that while the center depth isn't necessarily like the best part of this team, I think having so many bodies to just like be more than enough to get you through the season, like essentially having that go from a weakness to a reliable part of this team that you can rely on for the entire regular season is in itself like an advantage of this team that they didn't have last year. Now, like when it comes playoff time, would you prefer to just have the more traditional 1, 2, 3, 4 of best scorer, second best, center scorer, third, et cetera, et cetera? Sure, this is more of a mix and matchy type approach to building a center core that maybe like no one player is the ideal 2C, but you can at least get, offensively over 40 points probably from all three of the projected 2, 3, 4 of Suter, Shen, and Bjugstad. I think Bjugstad can get 40 points. I don't know. Maybe I'm just way too high on the Blues right now, but I think with the talent on wing and the ice time that he'll be asked to play, I think there will be at least a shot. But I think that that's sort of how I'm conceptualizing this. Is that like Shen and Suter as your 2C, 3C might not be the typical 2C, 3C, but both of them are better than your average NHL third line center and are probably worse than your average NHL second or like your average playoff team second line center.
Yeah.
But at the bare minimum, I think this absolutely makes them a playoff, like going from playoff hopeful to like should make the playoffs level of NHL team, because if you have troubles up the middle with this kind of center core, then there's another problem in the mix, whatever it may be. And it gives you 4 lines of genuine offensive, like serious offensive ability. Obviously, the top line with Robert Thomas will always be able to create. A second line with Pius Suter will be able to offer plays in transition on the rush. A third line with Shen, or swap the numbering for Shen and Suter if that's what you prefer. But a third line with the other one that or a second line with Shen, whatever, is will be super physical, will really bully you and try and just dominate the puck possession side of things and can create offense through that way. And then the fourth line with Nick Bjugstad is going to have some, again, sort of like offensive creativity and ability to be more dangerous of an offensive unit than a fourth line should be. I mean, I think Toropchenko took some serious strides last season, and we all know Nathan Walker can score goals like any fourth liner can. You mix that with the real finishing fourth line center, and yeah, I think that can be an offensively scary fourth line. Again, with the caveat of for a fourth line, but still, you've now got 4 real lines, like a real forward core that is going to be relentless, is not going to let go, is not going to give up on games, because they're always going to have the ability to come back and again, that ability to take over any game script, I think this team absolutely should have that. I think they've got set lines of like mix and match ability. I think they've got one of the most like multiple variable and just best coaches in the league pairing this up with a young forward core that you add in two more experienced players, but who can execute their game and help bolster the development of the young guys on the roster. And yeah, I'm really starting to see how this offseason plan is coming together, and I'm really liking how it's looking so far.
Yeah, for sure. If in I do have one more question, but real quick, if in October I told you all summer long, here's what the Blues did. They traded one of their depth wingers for a young right-handed defenseman, like for the future, right? They replaced Faxa with another depth center, and they signed Pius Suter, who is like a solid middle six center. If that's all they did, what grade would you give that offseason? I'm just sort of interested to see, like, 2 days in, what grade you give the Blues and Doug Armstrong.
I think that that description is still sort of shortchanging it, and I'd still probably give it like a B plus,
Yeah,
maybe pushing an A minus. And like, I still don't think that's really going into everything that how this team is potentially turning around out of this re
yeah,
whatever. Like, yeah.
yeah, for sure. Okay, now my last question on sort of these center guys, because next I do want to talk about Nick Leddy being placed on waivers and what that means for the defense core and maybe some other older defensemen that are still on the team. Um, so Shen and Suter, they're going to be the middle six guys, right? Holloway, Shen, or Holloway and Kyrou are your second line wingers. So one of them is probably going to be playing with those two. But on the third line, right, whether it's Shen or whether it's Suter, and now that Bolduc is gone, um, you know, who do you have winging those guys, right? Who do you have on either side of? And if your answer is different for the two, I'd be curious to hear. But like based, excuse me, based on what they have, left in the organization, who do you put around Suter and Shen on the third line? Because I think that really
Mm-hmm.
ties together this conversation here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the top six or the top four, sorry, the top six of the first two lines does feel at least set in the personnel. I still think there's going to be a lot of mix and matching with like who plays where, but it feels like Kyrou, Holloway, Buchnevich, and Snuggerud are all going to earn the top two lines spots on the wing. Now, whether that's, Booch Thomas Kyrou, Booch Thomas Holloway, um, Kyrou Thomas, whatever you want to do on the top line. It feels like those are the players I'm not including for this exercise essentially. But on the third line, I personally would really like to see Jake Neighbors play on that third line. I think him with a Braden Shen or a Pia Suter would work really well because Neighbors is going to play strong in front of the net, and Shen is your guy who battles down low. So if you can get a quick outlet pass to Neighbors in front, if he could win a stick battle, I think that absolutely that could be a winning formula. And Suter is a guy with more of a passing upside, I think. Excuse me, that Shen doesn't have. Shen is more just a wrecking ball on ice. Suter has a little bit more finesse, and I think Neighbors, who has been sort of, I don't know, I feel like we criticize Neighbors that he's been like trying to find the right pairing on the team that he hasn't quite, fit into his role yet. And yet his first two seasons, his first two full seasons, he's got 27 and 22 goals respectively. So pretty good for a super young winger. Um, so with Neighbors, like in what was a down second year where he scored 22 goals, I think playing him with Suter or with Shen for different reasons could get you back up to those finishing numbers. And I think he's like the ideal third liner. Um, but I personally like.
I agree.
Also, it seems like the team just would really like to put Neighbors in that role. They tried him on the top six, and it just wasn't really working. Um, Interesting that they never really gave Bolduc that opportunity. That like it just seemed like Neighbors was their guy, and Bolduc didn't really earn the ice time for one reason or another with Doug Armstrong and co. But anyways, to me, Neighbors is that perfect third complementary third line piece. And then whoever you stick with Neighbors, I think that sort of depends on the permutations of the centers, of everything else around it, because you could really mix and match as you please on that role. Maybe it's giving Dvorsky a chance on the third line, and you've got Neighbors Suter Dvorsky or Neighbors Shen Dvorsky. Maybe it's Texier, or you could put Matthew Joseph. If it's like Shen and Neighbors, you probably want a little bit more defensive help because both of them are not the best defensive players. If you have Suter and Joseph, then you've got a really good defensive line. I think Suter, my favorite is probably Neighbors Suter Joseph, but maybe you want to put Bjugstad with Joseph on the fourth line and help let Joseph be Bjugstad's Robin to his Batman. And then you throw Dvorsky on the fourth line and let yourself get offense that way. There's just so much mixing and matching and creativity that they could do. Now, what I could really see happening, or what I would really like to see happening, that I don't know if it's even possible, but there's just such a mix up of talent and of skill sets here that what they could really do is depending on the matchup, if you're playing a physical heavier team, that maybe you set your lineups one way and maybe you give Snuggerud first line minutes because he's really good playing against physical wingers. And if you're playing more of a skilled team, maybe then you put Shen at the 2C because he's really good at dominating skilled players and just throwing hits around, physically controlling the ice. And I think there's just so many fun permutations as to how this can line up that I am so excited to see how it all plays out. I think they have such a creative chance to once again sort of rethink how roster building is done. If last season it was realizing that offer sheets can be good, this season it's sort of this I keep using puzzle of how the pieces fit, but it's a more adaptable puzzle. If you could mold the pieces to however you want, it's almost like building a Lego set. Sometimes you can follow the instructions and have the perfectly coached Doug Armstrong or Jim Montgomery game to success, but sometimes you might need to go off script and do something else. And they have the roster construction ability to mix and match and interchange pieces and give yourself the best chance to win on any given night, which is super fun.
Yeah, super fun, as you said. I'd also be interested to see if they leave one of those winger spots open, or maybe not open, but leave the possibility open, right? To call up someone, maybe like you said, Dvorsky could be fun, or maybe even Carbonneau impresses in his first season in the AHL, or where I guess wherever he goes. And we see him slot in at some
could
point.
Be ready.
Stenberg, yeah, exactly. Maybe even Pickard-Cheek gets off to a really hot start, or I don't know. I'd be interested to see if one of the prospects could work in there. That would be fun. But yeah, I agree. They have a lot of opportunity to be creative, to be crafty and intelligent with how they make their lineups. We saw them find a lineup and stick with it for 15 straight games. They really like stability. I feel like Jim Montgomery really likes stability when it's working, and so whatever they decide works, I expect them to stick with it for an extended period of time again. Anything else to add on that? Because I do want to talk about Nick Leddy and the defense.
Really quick, just I'm really seeing how this plan is all working together of having all these complementary pieces. Because I mean, when we analyze the teams that are doing it best in the league, that's how Florida's winning, is they have all these complementary pieces to play different roles in their lines on the ice. And now the Blues can do something kind of similar to that, not obviously to the same level as Lussarainen and Verhaeghe and all these guys, but instead what the Blues have is youth, and they have that pipeline flowing of Stenberg and then Stancil and Pickard-Cheek and Yeko and all these other guys who are just waiting to get their crack in the NHL. And then that's on top of, Carbonneau and future draft picks that we're going to be making that are also going to be shooting up. So just the more I think about how this offseason has gone. And like, yeah, Bolduc was so much fun last year and was really, really good. And I think he's going to be really good for the Montreal Canadiens. But the way that Army was able to address not one, but like pretty much all of the big weaknesses from last season, as well as the way that they were able to like shore up every corner of this roster. And I think they've just built a winner here. I think they've built a regular season winner. Plus, you've got that man in net for the playoffs that will always give you a chance. And if you're not trying to win in the regular season, then it's arguably impossible to build for the postseason. Just ask Edmonton. So I'm just super fascinated as to how the roster turn of the next couple of years plays out too. And I think that Bolduc trade just sort of, even if it's not the piece we all would have preferred to give up, it does make the calculus a lot easier of figuring out what you've got. And if somebody had to go, it sucks that it had to be him, but like I think in the long term, this is really going to end up being a very positive move for the Blues, not just to get a guy like Mailloux on the team, but also to clear out the space and give some of these other depth options a chance.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed. I think we should pivot to talk Nick Leddy now, but I do want to say before we do, if you're new to Note News, we've been having a lot of fun with this one. Love that the chat has been so active. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. We do this like at least twice a week, and so we'd love to have everyone back again. So the best way to follow along with us and keep up to date with like off-season stuff, and then as we get closer to the season, preseason stuff, then subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Help us get to 500. That's a big goal of ours, a huge milestone for us. So we'd appreciate the help there. So hit that button, hit the like button. If you prefer audio, we're on Spotify and Apple. You can follow, rate, review, and then follow us on socials at Note News Pod on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And yeah, thanks. In the chat, we have done a little bit of a rebrand. So we hope you all like our new logo and our new style and new graphics and stuff like that. It's been a lot of fun. Okay, let's talk about Nick Leddy now. So this is the other news. Not as flashy as these acquisitions, but it is interesting. It is consequential. The Blues placed defenseman Nick Leddy on waivers today. He had only one more season remaining on his contract at $4 million. And we'll find out, I believe, tomorrow afternoon if he's been claimed. And this is not connected to a buyout or anything like that. The buyout period has closed already. But I think the addition of Mailloux makes Leddy a little redundant, especially as for a team that's trying to get younger as well. So yeah, what are your thoughts on the Leddy signing? What that means for the D-core and like where we'll see some of these familiar faces slot in, whether it's Falk or Tucker or Kessel even, and then obviously the new guy Mailloux, which we have already talked about a little bit. But what are your thoughts on Leddy being waived, and then could something be coming for Justin Falk? I think is the big thing people want to know. What are your thoughts?
Well, that definitely opens up the opportunity for Mailloux to come in and play, which is like that's how they got him the NHL job, probably is by waiving Nick Leddy. But yeah, I mean, on Leddy's side, thank you for your time. Honestly, his contract was never really as bad as people I think said it was. A 4x4 was never like that much money to commit anyways. But yeah, the product on the ice was pretty disappointing for his tenure. And definitely it does feel like a Falk option is coming. I would have to say I guess, yeah, we've already kind of talked about the Mailloux edition too, but this is where he's going to play now. He's going to take over Nick Leddy's role. Probably, maybe we'll play the full season, but we'll probably play at least half the season on the third pair. Maybe get elevated to a second pair role if he earns it. Where this interests me is how Theo Lindstein is going to fit into all of this, because this is a player that they're definitely very high on, which to me, it feels like maybe this could be signaling an end of the Cam Fowler era, perhaps. This might be reaching too much into it, but if this team wants to give Lindstein a role, he's right now blocked by Tucker, who can only move up behind Broberg, who can only move up behind Fowler. And Fowler is going to be 34, I believe. So I'm at least like throwing the idea out there that maybe we don't extend another aging defenseman now that we are finally getting younger on defense. It'll depend on how Fowler plays this season, but you'd like to think by then Broberg will be ready for the second pair or for the top pair. And then you've got Lindstein to fill in the pipeline immediately on the left side. And then on the right side, yeah, it does feel like another move is probably coming. Something relating to Falk, at least. And then long-term wise, Parayko is still going to be Parayko. It'll depend on whoever that guy coming in is, but if the hope is that Mailloux can eventually reach his offensive upside, I totally think he could be a number 2 to Broberg's number 1. That's quite the projection for both of them, but I think there's a world where that happens. But at the very least, he should be a top 4 offensive contributor that having Leddy off the team allows him to play and allows him to grow into that role of playing a top 4 defenseman role. So trying to think a little bit like ahead of how all this is looking right now, it's really starting to turn around. If you think about where we were on the defensive core like this time last year when Krug was still on the team, I don't know if we knew at this point that he would miss the entire season. I think it was around this time that it got announced.
Right. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
If you think with or without Krug, like just how the defense was like Parayko, Falk, Krug, Leddy, and Perunovic was 28. Is there someone I'm forgetting? Maybe. But now to having Broberg, who's 23, Tucker, who I actually don't know how old Tyler Tucker is. Let me find that. Mailloux,
he's 24.
Okay, and then Mailloux's 22. Now, like just the age core on this defense has just turned around so quickly now that Leddy is off the team. And the way it's looking long term is not just like we got a bunch of young and maybe could become something defensive guys. It's like legitimately can be 3 core pieces of your defensive roster, which is super exciting.
Definitely. Yeah, and like for a lot of the season, that was a kind of a big storyline, was the average age of the Blues defensemen. It was up there. Ryan Suter obviously played a big role, but an older guy and was never going to be part of the long term picture here. I think the Leddy on waivers. I mean, we kind of all saw it coming. Leddy wasn't going to be on this team come October. Be interested to see what happens next, whether or not he gets claimed, and what happens after that if he doesn't get claimed. But I'd be interested to see how this all shakes out, because as you said, like maybe something's coming where they I feel like we've heard some buzz about Cam Fowler potentially being extended. He's got one more season remaining on his contract. And if it's something that's like a couple years, I wouldn't hate it. But yeah, I would want to be cautious of another extension for an aging defenseman for sure. But that being said, like if there's nothing else coming, like I want them to make sure there's something else coming before making that decision, So that's my thought on Fowler. In terms of the others, I think Justin Falk sounds like the chat is in agreement as well. Justin Falk, we want him to be moved. I really wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't, if we saw him in St. Louis come October. But I will say, like, the way that the defenseman market is shaping up for free agents, there's not a lot left, especially in the way of right-handed, of right D. So like I could see the way that the free agent market has developed, that sort of creating interest in Justin Falk and maybe allowing the Blues to get a little bit more than they would have otherwise. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him stick around. And I feel like I would want and I feel like I would expect them to have another plan if they did decide to move off of Falk, right? Whether it's an offer sheet of Bowen Byram or trading for Bowen Byram or something big like that, or trading for another, making like another Cam Fowler type trade, guy who has a couple years left and can handle those top 4 minutes, more of a reliable guy. Um, but I don't know. Like I'm not sure. I could see it going both ways. I guess Falk staying in St. Louis or them trying to move off. I don't see them trying to move off of him again unless they have a plan for someone to take over those top 4 minutes. But do you have any other thoughts on Justin Falk or the decor in general or any of these moves really?
I mean, the fact that they've been trying to move Falk for what feels like an eternity now feels like this is finally the offseason that it gets done. I mean, everyone is trying to make shakeups on defense around the league, everyone is trying to make shakeups around the league, and I bet you could probably with some salary retained, you could have someone take on Falk's contract, especially if their salary retained. I'm not really worried about that. Finding the right partner and the right replacement will be the hardest part, and that's where I could see the move stalling. Yeah. But I would put it at probably, I don't know, 60-70% chance that they are able to move Justin Falk, because it just feels like, I mean, it feels like it's time to, and it feels like they've been wanting to for a while. I doubt entering this window that they let that opportunity pass again.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see it coming for sure. Okay. Anything else to add on these signings, this trade, and these sort of all these roster moves? Because I mean, a lot of shakeup, for 2 days into free agency, as I said. This could be a very interesting team come October.
Yeah, absolutely. Just that I love the way that this roster has coalesced and come together in the final minutes or I guess just starting minutes, excuse me, of the offseason. It feels like we're already ready for September and October hockey. Just I'm very excited to see the development of the young guys, of like the not NHL ready yet guys. I think that's going to be sort of the final step as to what the future of the Blues could look like. But I think in terms of the NHL roster, it's pretty much set, and save barring maybe a Falk move and a replacement, I am excited to watch Blues hockey this year, because this is going to be at least a top third offensive team and definitely a top half, probably also top third defensive team, which should definitely top third on both phases of the puck should get you in the playoffs in a 50th percentile year. So I think they've really built very smartly for the regular season, and I think they were kind of always ready for postseason play when you've got the goaltender that you have, plus some of the highs of Thomas, Kyrou, Holloway, who can all show up. Snuggerud, what we think he could be. We'll see what Dvorsky looks like. Now I'm starting to get ahead of myself, but I think they've got the what's it called? The wild cards for the postseason, and I think they've got the structure for the regular season. So last thing I'll say is I would give my kudos to the front office, and in Doug Armstrong's final year, it's not what I was expecting, but it kind of wasn't what I was expecting, because it was such like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like that isn't maybe the flashiest of changes, but it's enough. And yeah, I totally see the vision, and I'm excited for it.
I am as well. Okay, I think that'll do it for us. If you missed some of the earlier parts of the episode, we talked the Mailloux Bolduc trade, so be sure to go check that out as well. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Like I said, we do this twice a week where we're talking all things Blues all the time. So as long as there continues to be news, and if there are any any other acquisitions or speculation or rumors or anything like that, we'll be here to talk about all of it. We're hoping to have a special guest on pretty soon, hopefully next week if we can figure out some scheduling to react to these moves and also talk about the Carbonneau pick as well. We did some of that draft coverage, so if you want to hear our thoughts on Carbonneau and the future of the Blues, go check out some of our recent episodes as well. We'd love to have everyone back. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Trying to get to 500, huge milestone for us. So thanks to everyone that's done that already. Hit that button if you haven't. Like this video, follow, rate, review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. It really does help us out. And then follow us on socials, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod, where we post a lot of other great stuff, graphics, memes, reels, that kind of stuff. And also we'll announce when we're going live and when we have an upcoming episode. So again, thanks to everyone for tuning in and being active in the chat. We'll see you next time, and let's go Blues, man.
Let's go Blues.